transmissions detected.
Kill them all.
May I tell you what I think happened? Alrighty then.
Hello, my friends. Today I document the land of Tartary and its people. They must have been a huge threat to those who ruled the world. I mean, in order to erase them off the map, it had to be a coordinated effort because their style is everywhere. You know, you can see it in the architecture. I mean, no one nation by themselves could have done it either. Maybe a few of them had a common enemy and they decided to attack, or they were already gone when we little humans showed up. But you know, they had to repair a lot. Look at St. Petersburg in 1862. I believe that's what it is. It's in ruins. And then the next photo is about 25 years later in the 1880s, and it appears to be rebuilt. It looks like it to me. And all of these photos are real, by the way. There's no AI. It's from the Library of Congress. They're all free. But it's like crews were brought in to like remodel everything and take pictures for the official record. And that's why hardly nobody's around. And in the much older pictures, there's like tens of thousands of people everywhere. But early on, no. Like when they would have been a bunch of people. Then you got the old doors that they kept up. That's always got me. Like, look at that guy standing there. And then you have other ones that has a door cut into them for the smaller people. And then when you ask about it, they're like, oh yeah, we just did that. I tried to figure out who were the good guys and the bad guys, and well, I just couldn't imagine them being worse than the circus we have now. So, but I think the issue with Tartary, in a nutshell, it's people. It added confirmation to another document that the peasants had. Those in charge needed everyone to believe their reality, their science, their version of God, their new world order of things. Never letting a good crisis go to waste is, I think, what happened. Because the population around these enormous buildings and castles and palaces, they lived in wooden boxes. I mean, master craftsmen lived in junk compared to what they built as their post office, you know. The official storyline tells us during the Dark Ages, when all this stuff was made, elite aristocrats and kings constructed the finest buildings that we have today. They diverted rivers and made artificial canals and coastlines, but they had one huge quirk about them. They were the filthiest and dirtiest people to have ever lived. That's the official record. Nobility worldwide apparently not only decided to start marrying their brothers and sisters, which tells you the caliber of people we're dealing with, you know, but they never took baths or washed themselves off. We're told they simply lived like uncivilized feral humans, you know, covered in filth. A queen could often be seen casually relieving herself in the corner of a beautifully decorated ballroom. Some were maybe shy and preferred the hallways and the foyers, or used chamber pots that they poured out the window when they got full. And most people below didn't mind because they did it on the street like they do in India today still. This is the official story. I'm not being funny. You know. But think if you lived underground or in a cave your entire life with no rules, no adults to teach you right from wrong, no one educated around you. You probably had no manners. You were used to doing it anywhere you felt the need, right? Well, is that the founders? The rooms, the furniture, the clothes that they're wearing doesn't really put off the dirty vibe, does it? If you think about it, there's no way that that's even remotely true anyway. I mean, it's somebody's hate that they obviously felt towards them. Like they said that to mock and disrespect them in the official record. Like a shock and awe, like decoy to cover up everything else that doesn't add up. All the anomalies around them. And we're supposed to believe that these architects were creating the finest of things that mankind has to offer, just to be ruined, to be urinated and defecated on. That's ridiculous. Just go behind the curtains right there or outside in the street. Hundreds of years ago in St. Petersburg, Russia, someone piped water from 60 miles away. By connecting it to multiple storage and holding tanks, it mechanically built up hydraulic pressure or head pressure by itself. No need for a pump. It was forced through handmade pipes to every fountain in the city, and it still works today. Now, the enormous labor it took was unbelievable. And if you did all of that, wouldn't you put one more pipe in for a sewer pipe? You would think so. A quote from Proto-Civilization. It's a great Russian channel if you haven't seen it. You have to read the subtitles, but all this stuff is in his backyard, and yeah, good channel. But he said, if you can build things like the Samson Fountain in the middle of your city, where water bursts out of a lion's mouth some 20 meters or 60 feet into the air, then a sewer pipe would be a kindergarten-level achievement for you. Even the Greek and Romans had toilets and baths everywhere. Yep. We're told about the greatness of the ancient kings and their enormous and rich empires. And in the same breath, they tell us how cruel and murderous and disgusting they were. Yeah. As my Russian friend says, they appear to have all been simply the parasites who came along and found all the ruins in the buildings that obviously a race of giants or a divine group of people built. Around 1681 in Versailles, France, here's another one. Water was piped from over 11 miles away using the power of the Seine River and what they call the machine. It pressurized the water, pushing it 142 meters or 466 feet uphill. Yep. 200 years later, 1850s or 60s or so, the Marley machine was allegedly made to replace that old pump, the 200-year-old pump. But in 1680, those people built the original and handmade over 75,000 feet of water pipe. And with all that effort, nobody ran one more pipe into the palace for them to use. No drinking, no washing themselves off with. Not till the late 1700s, early 1800s, when everybody showed up, right? We're also told that the smell of perfume wasn't to seduce any man. No, a princess wore it to mask the horrible smell of her unwashed body. I'm not being funny there. That's exactly what they say. Perfume was so expensive, no one could afford it but royalty. And instead of taking a quick bath, they paid thousands of dollars for a tiny bottle, which apparently didn't fool anyone, by the way. And we're told that it was common for them to only take a bath twice in their life. This is everyone. In the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, all the way up to like the 1700s, 1800s. Twice in their life, once at birth and once at marriage. How foul of a world would that have been? Oh my God. What happened was these feral people, these barbarians, got the perfume from the mansion that they moved into, and they sprayed it all over themselves, hoping to mask their body odor. But it didn't work, you know. That's the only people who would do something like that. That's why I think that the great monarchs and emperors in that 1700, 1800 era had to be nothing but the settlers in an abandoned land. They're all frauds. I mean, a small group of uneducated people with no home training shows up, and they happen to stumble upon empty cities and towns full of gigantic houses and buildings, full of perfume and beautiful clothes and wigs and everything, and they put them on. And that's why they, you can't dress up a pig, right? And they had no idea what a set of blueprints were, much less how to build any of it. Whoever did, 100% didn't pee on the floor. I mean, look at that room. Would you have peed in the floor? Walk through human waste, adorned with silk and jewels, with your dress scraping the floor. Ah, how disgusting was that? In 1754, the Winter Palace in Russia was built. It has 1,786 doors, 1,057 rooms, 1,945 windows, all handmade, Before Home Depots, before construction crews and cranes and all that, power tools, everything. But you know what they didn't do? Not one room, not one fixture for someone to powder their nose or use the bathroom in. No thoughts of personal hygiene in this place until around the 1800s, like everything else. We're told the people who designed the best things we have simply didn't install running water where they actually lived at. They just went outside to the fountains where the horses were at and got it. One theory was it used to have bathrooms, yes, but the uneducated founders didn't dare mess with any of the existing plumbing or anything else. That's why they didn't have any. All the pipework would have been buried on the bottom levels, clogged or broken deep below the ground at, the original ground level. And that goes for the heating and the electrical systems too. And perhaps whenever they messed with it, not having a clue how it worked, they often caused more problems than they fixed. We read about some of the major fires worldwide that cows started, burned down the entire city. Somebody making a cake just happened to take Paris out. But could it have been an electrical fire that was going on? Like, think of all the devices that would still be generating electricity on a damaged system. I'm not an electrician, but isn't that kind of hazardous to meddle with it? Especially like if you didn't know what you were doing and it was all on a shorted out grid anyway. So every time you tried to plug something in or do, they just simply bricked up those access panels. They didn't know what purpose it was, along with the pipes and the floors and the walls. They just capped them off, removed them, or covered them up with, brick and plaster, just like they did the fireplaces. Nobody actually burned anything in it until they got there. Another thought was the old buildings we have worldwide could, in theory, be ancient. Who can say? Maybe they were meant to survive the different ages of man. We just come along and kind of renovate them. A stranger thought is, a time not long ago, our biology was way different. The people of Tartary and others around the world like them simply didn't need to relieve themselves as we do today. Maybe they left out the sewer pipes for a very good reason. Why would you need them? They weren't built for the living. They were built for the people whose bodies were different from ours. Therefore, no need for a restroom, is it? You live forever. You don't need to go. In theory, it's plausible, but that would mean that the millennial reign has already come and gone. And who knows? And when you dive down this rabbit hole, you end up at the orphan trains. I mean, millions of kids show up one day out of the blue. Were the orphanages just building up the numbers of parentless babies before bothering the public with a crisis? Ignore it's right after everyone's revolution. Around the 1800s, it spans over like 100 years. Baby incubators start being shown off at world expos and in books and everything. Live babies in them too. Like someone had a premature baby, a bunch of them. I mean, how are they all over? They ran newspaper articles that say, sign up, get any kid you want. There's postcards of cabbage patches and scenes of like women with nets scooping up little babies like they were artificially grown, like crops or farm animals. And there's silence if anyone asks what's really happening here. We're told, you're stupid. We know everything about history. That was just something they were doing. Yeah, but the implications are horrific if you really see, like, what are they really doing here? Were they making babies? God forbid. What happened to their parents? The plague, war, insane asylums, none of that adds up to enough numbers to account for all these millions of children. And where did everyone else go that used to live in the empty cities that we see in the 1800s, 1800s? Where are the very tall people and the artists and builders of such a grand and beautiful world? They were in every country, not just in Russia or China. Every major city had the same oversized, Romanesque eye candy type of architecture. That's what makes it all so strange. There had to be a lot of people to build all those cities, but then they just disappeared and then they all came back again. Technology goes backwards, forwards, backwards. Here's something that'll make some people have a meltdown. My Russian friend brought up that 90% of us can't tell you who our great-great-grandparents are or where their graves are at, where they're buried at. And I can't tell you. I don't know about you guys, but it might not seem weird to some of you, but I think most of you will start thinking about that and how true it is. You might know your great-grandparents. You may even know where their grave is. But anything past about 150 years before that, hardly none of us know. Yeah. You may have been told about them, but like physical, like birth certificate, grave site, nothing. Yeah. I mean, even the number of graves in graveyards doesn't add up, and another anomaly, right? And by the way, when I looked on its face, the whole ancestry thing, look, that has to be a complete guess or a total scam, because it's absolute truth that no official birth certificates or death records of any kind were taken down in most major cities worldwide until the mid to late 1800s. Some countries later than that. So how can anyone 100% know? If your family name isn't in hieroglyphs somewhere on a temple or written on some ancient scroll somewhere, how could you be certain? After many days on the subject, I think what went down was, it was quite simple, The crazies, the evil ones, they stepped in. They hid the history of the giants and of the world from us. The story of the Most High God's creation and how we ended up here today, that's what was so important to hide. It's all that's left. It's like what the oldest scrolls say that the earth was like before we got here. I figured if you want to be in charge and run the entire place with a heavy hand of evil and tyranny, the last thing you want is any of those people around. You can't have the same things in the religious texts that the peasants read about walking around or in any of your history books. I mean, they're not going to bow down and do your bidding if you do that. Of course, the attempt was made to get rid of all the other evidence too. In some ways it worked and others it didn't, but they constantly test our religious beliefs and they tell us everything's fake and just the demon gods that they worship. That's what's real, What strikes me as the oddest thing ever, though, it's the one thing that I can't get over. If we take what Jesus said, like his word is absolute fact, which I would think we would do, right? He said to those around him that he had completed the task he was given. He told the people he loved, his friends, you will not taste death before what he had promised came about, right? Our Father in heaven, God himself, sent him to save us and the earth from the evil one who had taken control of it, for whatever reason, right? So, did he not come back and do what he said? But what does that have to do with the old world, right? Tartary. Well, could that group or nation of people, and anyone like them, belong on the same timeline as the reign of Christ? The technology used and the buildings would definitely fit in. It seems like everyone worked together. They built it all over the world. Was it the reign of the Watchers and the giants? For instance, like, is it all mixed together? Like they just separated it. But like Noah, Gilgamesh, Enoch, the Pharaohs, the Aztecs, right? The Mayans, everybody all together, all living at the same time or within just a few hundred years of one another. Because remember, if it's all a lie, who can say for sure? The circus we inherited loves to cause confusion and chaos and make us forget our place and our purpose. That's their whole goal every day. And since it started, trying their hardest to be like God, that's number one. One of our greatest grandfathers many years ago, Enoch, told us about these watchers, the giants, and what they did to the earth and everyone in it. Despite our history being totally altered and upended, somehow his words were perfectly preserved. Allegedly, it was thousands of years ago when he took scrolls that he had written and hid them away. He addressed them to the final generation. He told of when we would find them and the strange mysteries that we would know about, but only during our generation of the world and no other. Weird, isn't it? He swore by the Most High God himself that he had seen our names in the books of life, and that this world was not what you and I had been told or made to believe it was. It was a very special place, an enclosure with a crystalline cover on it. Our home, the proving ground for souls, Based on what we can physically see, it surely does seem like there was giants and perhaps heavenly watchers involved, doesn't it? With their knowledge, which far surpassed any of us little people, they're who installed the electrical and the plumbing systems everywhere. They built all of the anomalies, they call them, the things that were impossible for us to do. And then something happened, a natural event, a war, who knows? And then these fools showed up. They turned it all off and claimed everything is their property, hiding what they couldn't figure out till a later date when they could. And it's funny how Enoch's words, mean more than, I don't know, some random nobody that claims everybody peed on the floor and never took baths. They mean more to me than that. I just don't think that that's how we've progressed. I think that before us, no land was off limits. We weren't bound to just one area or certain area of the world. Everything was pleasing to our eyes and all of our senses, and it's what made our stay here more joyful and a little less stressful. There were no scientists spewing insanity about the heavens, and no one had even changed the maps to a ball Earth in space yet. There were no fun police or crooked politicians around. There was a period of time where there was nothing mankind could think of that they couldn't do. You can see it in the rock, in the stone. Was it the millennial reign? Is this the little season that started around 1775 or 6, about 250 years ago? And it's why nothing adds up. It's why the world is so completely opposite than what it should be. And did the Watchers rule over us and call their empire Tartary, maybe? That would be a good reason for it to be deleted, right? Another really weird question I also have is this one. Is Tartary where the prison called Tartarus was at in the book of Peter, right? Where the chains of darkness were at, right? The Tartarians were prison guards of Tartary or Tartarus, right? I don't know. Was the prison opened up and everyone freed, and then they had to get rid of everyone in Tartary? Who knows? But no matter what, who, or why, we know somebody lied through their teeth about all of this. We know that technology was used a long time ago before it shouldn't have been here. It sure is suspicious that those people in their country, Tartary, that's the only ones erased in all the world's shenanigans that took place. And it's wild to think that they must have been such a huge threat to someone, both dead or alive. Drastic measures were taken, that's for sure. Who and why? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yep. And that's just what I needed to say. My love to you all. I'm Wild Dog, and I am out of here.